Government moved to secure the cocoa sector as it announced new measures to ensure the local commodity market stays afloat. Now, these measures include new reduced price and the release of over 1 billion cedis to pay in part Cocoa Board's debt to farmers. The opposition, on the other hand, not only thinks these reforms are not new, but has urgent questions for government's handling of the cocoa sector. And today on Hot Issues, we hear what those questions and concerns are. Person on Parliament's Economy and Development Committee. My next guest is Ofoasia Yoruba MP, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah. Honorable, you're welcome to Hot Issues.
Thank you for having me.
The minority has had cause to call out the government on this handling of the cocoa sector crisis. You asked the government for immediate solutions and they came out with some reforms. Let's look at some of those reforms that they talked about. A new financing model, domesticating our cocoa a bit more, moving some debt from Cocoa Board to the Finance Ministry, the roads and highways now taking over cocoa roads. Is this the solution?
The first part of the solution is dealing with the current crisis that you have before you look at the reforms. But it appears to us that the government is confused on which to tackle first. From November 2025, the LBCs have been buying cocoa. We are told about 10 billion Ghana cedis worth of cocoa has been taken up by the LBCs, and they can't pay for it. And so poverty is setting in a lot of the cocoa communities across the country. And the LBCs tell us that the problem is that government is not paying. So there are about 10 billion cedis worth of cocoa that they've taken into their sheds. They cannot evacuate that to Cocoa Board because the last 10 billion that Cocoa Board took, they haven't paid for it. And because they are stuck with this about 10 billion, they cannot take more stock from the cocoa farmers who've harvested and dried their cocoa. So the value chain is frozen and poverty is setting in. So the first thing you do is to find a way to get Cocoa Board the support to pay the LBCs for the last 10 billion so that the LBCs can recycle that money and go back and pay for the cocoa that they have taken to the farmers and then now even take the new stock that is stuck because after a while it's going to get rotten. It's a perishable good. That is the first step, and that is why we say that the government must bail out Cocoa Board now so that Cocoa Board can honor its obligations to the LBCs and the LBCs can pay for what they've taken and then go back to the farm gates and pick some more. Now, if you don't do that and you come with an announcement that you have reviewed the price to 2,500 and you've introduced reforms for the future, you are not tackling the immediate problem. And I think it's because the government, and I regret to say this, is sometimes too interested in public relations gimmicks. And so they want to do things that look like they are doing something extraordinary tackling the problem. The problem in the cocoa communities is real, it's heartbreaking. People are struggling to buy medication, people are struggling to pay fees. Tackle that first. And then we can look at the reforms. By the way, about the reforms, we agreed on a reform program with the IMF before we left power. The problem is that for one whole year since they came to power, instead of implementing that reform program, they've been tinkering at the margins, dealing with things that for us are really, one, not important, and two, even detrimental to the success of the entire cocoa sector. That is why they are now coming to announce what they call a new reform plan. There's been a reform plan already. They have not been implementing it.
Let's take a few steps back with the issue of the debt that you had raised. We know that since the cabinet meeting and the subsequent announcement of these reforms, government has said has released some monies, about 1.1 billion cedis, 237 already paid, over 800 million on the way. Does it go to then speak to what you have mentioned already, that some debts are being paid?
So that would be A. But what government should tell you is whether or not the estimated 10 billion debt is true. That's the estimate that we are getting when we talk to the LBCs. Now, if you owe 10 billion and you make an announcement that you've paid 1.2, it's a drop in the ocean. Don't tell me about reforms for the future when you haven't dealt with even 30% or 20% of the current debt that you have taken from the cocoa farmers, which you have not serviced. So current payment is the key thing. And if what they are saying they've paid is 1.2 billion, what they should be telling us is what is the full amount. If what we are being told by the LBCs as 10 billion is what it is.
And this 10 billion is over what period?
This 10 billion is over from November till now.
November of 2025?
2025 till now. Cocoa that they've taken from about 1 million cocoa farmers across the country at the price of 3,625 per bag. Put it together, the estimate is that it's about 10 billion. That's what the LBCs are telling us. And so if you've paid 1.2, tell us what is the actual figure and what is the strategy to complete that payment now before you get into the other matters. And like I've told you, by the way, on the other matters, there was already a reform program. You've just refused to implement it.
We'll look at that reform program, right? Especially as announced also by the government. But then you also raise concerns about the pegged price right now. Why? Because on the market, on the global market as well, we see cocoa prices falling.
You know, it's very disappointing to hear the government spokespersons try to hoodwink Ghanaians that cocoa is a price that, or cocoa is a commodity that is sold on the spot price and passed to the cocoa farmer. From 1947 thereabouts, since the Second World War, when people like J.B. Dankwa made a strong case for the establishment of the cocoa marketing company, the model has been that we do a lot more of our sales on futures pricing. So we do a lot more forward sales. The reason is that cocoa is one of those commodities that swings in prices based on demand and supply on the market at any point in time. So cocoa sales is not done on spot basis. The model is that we sell about 70% on future pricing and then about 30% on spot. So by the time we are opening the cocoa year, the Cocoa Board will look at their rollover contracts. They will look at how much cocoa is estimated to be at the farm gates. They will look at what is estimated to be the pricing going forward. And they will also now look at their forward sales, the kind of arrangements they can make with the buyers. I'm going to make it available to you at $4,000 per bag or at this or that. They get to that understanding and then they strike what we call a guaranteed farm gate price. Then they come back into the Ghanaian market and announce that for this cocoa year, we can guarantee a price of 475 Ghana cedis per bag. This is what it was when we came to power, 475 Ghana cedis. And when you do that, the farmers, the purchasing clerks, the district officers, the LBCs, they plan based on this price that you have given. It was our colleagues on the NDC side who argued that this structure was bad and needed to be reset and needed to be changed to a dominant spot sales framework. So they would rather wait to get onto the market on a particular day and find what the spot price is. We argued over and over again that that is dangerous. You don't do that with a commodity like cocoa. They said we were robbing. In fact, they said we were stealing from the cocoa farmers. So they'll go into the cocoa areas and tell the farmers that, look at the price today, it's 6,500. The government is paying you 3,100. The government has stolen your 3,400. So when we come to power, we'll pay you this price, that's 6,500. We did all the explanation, press conferences, town hall meetings. You recall that DSO Aba, etc. My good friend Atu Forson, Eric Opoku, they were all there telling the cocoa farmer that the forward sales approach was bad. We were using it to steal from them, and the spot is rather better. So they came to power, and then they switched predominantly to a spot sales approach. Not only that, after they switched, when the prices were high, you would imagine that they would strike and sell. This is your formula, strike and sell. No. Because of a mix of factors, they were fighting among themselves, transferring people, that these guys are MPP people, take them out of the place, and just holding on and hoping the prices will go further. The prices have now dipped, and they are now telling the cocoa farmer that, one, because we are now on spot, because they changed it to spot, and two, the prices have dipped, they are now going to transfer the lower prices to the cocoa farmer. Now, this cocoa farmer has also forward sold his bag. Around October thereabout, you had told him that the price was 3,600. So he gave some of his bags away, took money from what they call cocoa crutch, or borrowed money from a rural bank against some of his bags. He's incurred expenses on it. There are purchasing clerks who have pre-financed purchases based on 3,600 because you've changed to spot and you didn't strike when the price was high. Now you are telling him that you are reducing the price to 2,500. So don't buy that argument that the global market, it has always been the case. But because of the framework that is used, we don't pass it on. When we came to power in 2017, in the 2017-2018 year, if I recall correctly, prices came down. We did not reduce prices because we were using a predominantly forward sales approach. And so we were able to calculate and hedge and keep prices where they were and absorb the difference until prices went up.
But when you think about it, the argument they make for the new sale approach is that, look, if it's higher, then the farmer will also make more money because then you haven't hedged, right? So perhaps this is just a business that's gone bad.
No, they gambled with it. This debate took place around 1940-something when the cocoa marketing framework was being put together. And Ghana decided that we wanted to do this mostly forward sales approach, which allows you to hedge because they know that the prices swing. They know that the prices swing. Our mothers who sell tomatoes in the market, who know it's a perishable commodity, and who do the wholesaling of tomatoes, sometimes they will talk to those who evacuate or break bulk. That Tuesday when we go to the market, I have 3 boxes. I want to give it to you at this price. And they try to lock in because they don't know who else will bring tomatoes on the market on Tuesday to bring the prices down. So they may hedge someone. They do it. How can you tell me that you, with all your sophistication, think that this is not a good approach? So they took a gamble. They changed the structure. They took a gamble. Now they have X on their faces. It is not about a slump in the global commodity price. They restructured. That's why we're here. I also hear them talking about debt. Just yesterday, I had a press conference. They got their finance committee members in parliament to come and do a press conference to say that there's a debt of 30 billion. And therefore, they need a bailout of 30 billion. By the way, we started saying they need a bailout. They said a bailout is not necessary and that they have to reduce the prices and they'll be fine. Why are they now saying that they need a bailout of 30 billion? But 30 billion, you see, cocoa board or cocoa is an export crop.
Right.
So the revenue is in dollars. So 30 billion cedis, what's today's exchange rate?
10 to 11, depending on how you're going.
Let's use their rate. 30 billion cedis is about $3 billion. When we came into power, the debt that they left us at Cocoa Board was 19 billion cedis at an exchange rate of about 4 cedis to the dollar. That's $4.7 billion. So you left us $4.7 billion. Cocoa prices were going down. We didn't reduce prices. Farm gate prices. We hedged. And we managed to keep the prices until prices started rising so that the cocoa farmer, the poor cocoa farmer, didn't have to suffer. You come and inherit a lower debt, $3 billion. You mess up the structure, and you say we should blame it on the MPP. We're not going to take this from anybody.
But you know, the question also will be, what was the price of cocoa at the time? You know, in doing that math. Right? What was the price of cocoa at the time?
The price of cocoa at that time was equivalent to 475 Ghana cedis per bag at the time. So it was a pass-through. But because we were able to hedge, we didn't need to reduce that 475 Ghana cedis. Our colleagues here, when we moved it from 4, and by the way, when we came from 475, we kept increasing it till it got to 3,100. And every time they were using spot prices to calculate and tell the farmer that we were robbing the farmer. They now promised that they'll pay 6.5. Even that 6.5 in the first year, they couldn't pay. First, they said they'll pay 3.2. Later, they said 3.6. And in the same cocoa year, when you've given the farmer a guaranteed price, you now come back and reverse it past the 3.1 that you inherited to 2.5. And if you go into the cocoa farms, and I encourage you to go there with your cameras and talk to the cocoa farmers on the ground, you will see the kind of pain, the kind of anguish that is setting in. And I fear that in the medium term, less and less people will go into cocoa. In the medium term, rural poverty, there are 1 million cocoa farmers, about 800,000 to 1 million. If you add their dependents and people who work on the farms, that's about 3 to 4 million people. In the medium term, poverty is going to set in many of these places. And that's why we're asking the government to go back and reverse this decision. At least let them finish this cocoa year. And then now let's deal with the reforms when we are getting to the next.
Which year was it that you say they could have struck? I mean, Cocoa Board could have struck at 10K and they didn't.
No, this particular year, after they had promised 3.6 or announced 3.6, based on their change to more spot. They announced 3.6 and they changed to more spot. And the prices were high, but they didn't strike. They were waiting and hoping it would go higher and sometimes fighting among themselves. And now it's come down because it's a commodity price. It goes like this. And their own announcements, sometimes they come and announce that they have like 50,000 tons of cocoa that is not sold. Ghana is the second largest producer of cocoa. When you announce that, the cocoa buyers say, there's a glut on the market. The price will come down.
One of the things the CEO has spoken about is some over 300,000 tons that were sold. But the beans were not available at the time. So what they did was they had to give off beans that they then had to clear that money that your administration had already taken. Which is the reason that it's part of the reasons where we are today.
They are called rollover contracts. Every year, in 2017 we had rollover contracts because what you do is that you would sit with the buyers and agree, this one wants 50 tons, 100 tons, 200 tons, 300 tons, okay. So we'll lock in the price based on the forward sales, we'll sign, and we'll agree to supply. Sometimes by the end of the year, we'll find that, we've got, let's say, 20 tons that we were not able to mobilize the beans to supply. So we'll roll it over that next year, when we get into that season, we'll supply it at this price that we had agreed on for this previous. It has always been the case. In fact, you factor it in before you announce your guaranteed farm gate price. So if this is the argument, are they suggesting to us that they didn't factor it in when they were announcing the 3.6? It's hogwash. They've gambled, they've lost, and they are panicking. What they need to do is to restore the 3.6, that's a guaranteed price they give the farmers, finish this cocoa year, and then now let's look at the reforms getting into the next cocoa year.
Let's look at the reforms now and how important they could be to the sector. You had mentioned that you already had reforms in place together with the IMF, before leaving office. How different are those reforms from this one?
So, for example, the subject of moving the cocoa roads operation and its debts to the roads ministry is in the old plan. It's not new. The argument of doing a lot more local processing of cocoa is part of the old conversation. It's not new. It's not novel. One of the things that they should be restoring in their new plan is the forward sales approach. Because if you do all of these reforms and you do not restore the forward sales approach, and you're going to do, and now I hear they want to come to Parliament with a law to institutionalize spot pricing and rather tell the farmer that they'll give the farmer 70% of whatever spot price there is. So tomorrow, if the spot price brings us to 2.5, the cocoa farmer who has spent 3 years on his farm, has hired labor, has sprayed his farm, has bought fertilizers, has incurred all sorts of costs, 3 years of investment towards harvesting. If on the day of harvesting, the prices come down to 2.5, what the NDC is telling us is that the reset means they will pass on that cost and give him 70% of that. That would be dangerous and inimical to the cocoa industry. That is a key component of the reform that they have to take away. They have to ensure that we go back to the predominantly forward sales approach so that we will be able to guarantee the cocoa farmer a certain price. That is the only way you encourage somebody to make an investment. Investors like certainty. That's the only way you can guarantee somebody to take a loan or to do whatever and go and set up 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres of a cocoa farm because he can see some certainty at the end. If you cannot do that, and you say that you are moving the cocoa roads here, bringing domestic production, and now they say domestic financing. Let me tell you, domestic financing in real terms, what it means is this, that you will do the cocoa bonds in cedi terms on the Ghanaian market and take away the forex exposure without syndication. That's what it really means. But it is a function of how much liquidity there is within the Ghanaian investor community. So here's what will happen. Assuming they say the $1 billion that was coming by syndication, don't go for it again. They've now converted it to 10 billion cedis, and they've listed it on the Ghana Stock Exchange or as a local bond to go and buy. The question is, the average poor Ghanaian, does he have 10 billion cedis to go and buy that paper? The answer respectfully is no. So the same foreign investor who would have come through the syndicated loan, he will now come through the local asset management companies and purchase. You haven't really solved anything. The only thing you've done...
You'll be putting money directly into...
How different is that from the syndicated loan? The only difference is that the currency exposure is what you have shifted from the syndicated to the domestic. So this argument of...
But is that not helpful?
It is, if you're able to do that. No, but I'm saying that... So that in itself does not solve the problem. It only takes away the currency exposure. They create the impression that we're not going to look for, if you listen to the president's remarks, we're not going to look for syndicated loan or money from abroad. We can finance our own cocoa from who has that liquidity. In the end, it's the foreign investors who are coming through the asset management companies.
But the argument has been that the syndicated loans have not been helpful to this country.
Because the syndicated loan provides liquidity. Because the amount of money, that's about 10 billion Ghana cedis that you need to buy the cocoa. The teachers, workers, yourself, myself, we don't have enough savings to mobilize 10 billion Ghana cedis to give to Cocoa Board to go and buy the cocoa before it goes to sell, hopefully on forward basis, and make its profit. So they ask the banks to syndicate among themselves and find us $1 billion from abroad, come, then they change it, then they do that. That's the whole essence of the syndicated loan. The only challenge with the syndicated loan, and it was one of the best loan programs because it was, like a grade A facility. The only problem was that when the entire Ghanaian economy was downgraded, when we're going through the economic shocks and we're downgraded, the global investor, when he looks at Ghana and Ghana has been downgraded to, let's say, B-,
then you won't get your money.
The investor there says that then I should not buy a foreign-priced Ghana bond. It did not mean that there was a problem, whether with Cocoa Board directly, or the ability to buy the beans and go and sell and pay. Far from it. What they are saying about the domestic financing, I'm saying that the only value is the foreign exchange loss that, or the forex exposure that it takes away. But the impression they want to create, the settings they always do, the impression they want to create is that we're not going to use foreigners' money to buy cocoa. That's not true. Because what will happen is that when you sell the domestic bonds, the foreign investors, they will come through the local asset management companies and the local banks, and they will buy the cedi denominated.
But which would you rather do? Which would you rather do?
For me...
Allow for us to benefit from the exposure?
For me, that is not even the real problem. The real problem is the type of trading model you are using locally. If you keep doing this spot trading model, you go for local money. You will now tell the farmers that you are reducing the price from 2.5 to 1.8. And that becomes a disincentive to the farmer today. And next year, you won't even get the cocoa beans you are looking. So when I say they are tinkering at the margins, what I mean is that they are not dealing with the real issue. They are touching things which they think sound nice in people's ears, and they are not dealing with the fundamental issue.
So at the end of the day, even if we implemented these reforms, we won't get what we expect to get from the sector.
These reforms are premised, or the success of these reforms are premised on the fact that Cocoa Board will function efficiently, including using a trading model that makes sense to the cocoa farmer. If you change that, these reforms won't matter. When
were these, not theirs, but when were your reforms agreed upon together with the IMF?
We signed it off with the IMF as part of the ECF program that we entered into. And during the handing over, we made it available to them. The expectation is that they would have started rolling it out. But as I told you, they were more interested in other matters. So they were not paying attention to this. They are now saying that they are going to handle these ones when there's a crisis. And we are saying to them that deal with the crisis first.
So these reforms, were they ever implemented under the NPP in any form?
We had signed them off at the tail end of our administration.
Right.
And they had the responsibility when they received the handing over notes of starting with it. But like I keep saying, they were more interested in other things than implementing these reforms. That's partly why we are here.
I see. I want us to talk about the 24-hour economy. We've spent a lot of time on cocoa board issues.
I understand cocoa is a big deal.
Absolutely. The NPP raised a number of concerns about the 24-hour economy. We know that this week the president signed the authority bill that came to Parliament. I remember in the beginning stages, one of the comments you had passed was that it was a deceit.
Yes.
Do you still stand by that?
I stand by it 100%. And I regret to say that they have deceived the young people of this country. What did they promise the young people of this country? Remember, when we were going into the election, there were two top issues. One was the cost of living crisis. The second was unemployment. Now, the cost of living crisis, they argued that it's because we had mismanaged the economy. One day we'll have an opportunity to deal with that. Unemployment, they said that they had an answer to it. That was a 24-hour economy. So we asked, what is 24-hour economy? Initially, you asked everybody, he has a different answer. And so we started mocking them about it. So you recall their manifesto launch. There was this young lady they brought who said that if we didn't have the capacity to understand it, they had a way of explaining it. It was 1, 3, 3. Very pretty young lady who they put up to go and do that exercise for her. And then the president himself, when he came to launch the manifesto, he had a clock there and says, this is the 24-hour economic clock. 1 job, 3 shifts, 3 people. And then they responded, Peche. The concept they sold to the young people of this country, millions of them, was that they were going to turn the 8-hour cycle into a 24-hour cycle. And they actually listed, if you look at their manifesto, they listed agencies on the public sector side that were going to work 24 hours. DVLA, Customs, Passport Office, quite a number of them. They came to power, and one of the first things that we started asking them was the blueprint, the policy document. So you recall from the president's first State of the Nation address, in my debate, I was like, when the president came, we were expecting to see the 24-hour economy document. He hasn't brought it. We kept hounding for it. We realized one day that they launched it in the public domain, never brought it to Parliament. I kept hounding them, bring it to Parliament, because this is your flagship program. Bring it early. Remember, Free SHS started September. Bring it so that I can start early. Eventually, what they brought is the 24-hour Economy Authority Bill. And that bill says that they are creating an authority to oversee the 24-hour economy. He has a chief executive, he has an internal auditor, he has board, then they will employ about some 100 people, they'll get their salaries and cars and other things. But when you read the bill, nowhere in the bill does it say that they are going to cause even state agencies or the private sector to work for 24 hours. The 133 that they gave us, nowhere in the bill would you find it. When I asked on the floor, the chairman of the finance committee, my very good friend Adongo, said, it doesn't need to be 133, it could be 122. We said, no problem. If it's 122, put it in the bill. Even the state agencies that they listed in the campaign, they eliminated it from the bill. So we actually moved an amendment to include it. Now let's include it in the bill. They objected to it. So what they've created is a very, very crafty institution to dangle in the face of young Ghanaians that the authority or the 24-hour bill has been passed. So something is happening. But absolutely nothing. And yesterday I saw the president in a signing ceremony. This morning I saw the front page of the graphic. And if you didn't know any better and you see it, you would think that, oh, when they say 24-hour economy, but I say with a lot of pain. I have a friend, he's an NDC guy in my constituency. He's called James. He teases me a lot every time I tease him a lot. He says they believe in it, they voted for it. In his name and on his behalf, and on behalf of the millions who voted for it, we have been asking, we have now seen it, and I regret to say that what they have passed will not deliver a 24-hour work cycle in this country. We'll be here.
The response to that has been that they will pass an LI that will have all these things that you've spoken about, that will properly define and show that this is what we are going to do under a 24-hour economy.
Only 2 people will say this. One is somebody who does not know the hierarchy of laws and the process of lawmaking, or 2 is somebody who knows but intends to deceive people. Only 2 people will say this. You have the mother legislation. You say you won't put it in it, and that you're going to use what we call inferior legislation or subsidiary legislation to do something that the mother legislation did not do, Why would you not put it in the mother legislation?
Well, because maybe this one is just to establish the authority.
To do what?
To do what will be in the LI.
No, no. So if you read Section 3, it lists the functions of the authority.
Absolutely.
They say the functions of the authority is to promote exports, to promote small-scale business, to promote micro, medium, small-scale enterprises. Even the functions of the bill, they don't put in it that this authority is to ensure that public agencies work for 24 hours. When we tried to put it in, they objected to it. And that's why I'm saying to you, in all humility, that they know what they are doing. They are hoodwinking it in front of the young people that they've passed the bill, it's coming. And I regret to say, nothing is coming. I encourage the young people, go online, Google the bill, and read it for yourself. You will be disappointed. But we also say that they have time.
Right.
They have about 2 more budgets to go. They have time to correct some of these things. Unfortunately, sometimes when we speak, I think because of the partisan nature of our politics, they are more interested in debating us than picking less. Even when we have made mistakes, and we are telling you that we made a mistake here, don't repeat it. They are more interested in debating us than listening to even our confessed mistakes.
Oh, there's been a situation like that?
Just this week on the floor, when they brought the Security and Intelligence Services bill, the new one, we have told them that we made a mistake when we set up a national security ministry. You want to correct it by repealing Act 1030 and passing a new one. You are worsening the problem by commingling the functions of the internal security, the internal intelligence agency with the external intelligence agency. Don't do that. Go back to the Act 1030 provisions on how the internal intelligence agencies should be separated from the external. They say they want to create the office of the National Security Coordinator as a whole intelligence and security agency on its own. So sometimes when we are giving feedback, I get the impression, regrettably, that they see it as partisan politics and are more interested in winning the soundbite, so they don't want to listen. But if you would listen, go back to the Gold Board Act. On the floor, we said, decouple the regulator from the commercial entity. The gold purchase program, we started it. We know where the mistakes are. And we are telling you that decouple it because PMMC was a limited liability company. Now you are downgrading it to a public corporation like Cocoa Board. You will make losses. They were more interested in winning the soundbite. So they didn't decouple it. Now when they came to operation, they said to do the functions of the regulator, which is to check smuggling, they have to pay a bonus to the gold buyers. That bonus is part of the reason for which they have lost minimum $214 million, which Parliament is about to investigate. And if they had listened, we could have saved the Republic this loss. So my prayer is that some of these submissions, when we make it, they listen in good faith.
I see. But, I mean, some institutions like the DVLA have started the 24-hour round-the-clock work in some of their stations across the country. And so it is being implemented even in public sector, is it not?
So let's do this. You have investigative reporters. Let them go across the DVLA outlets that are supposedly doing 24 hours and go and bring you reports on what is going on there. That's what I'll say to you. You remember GEHOC?
I do.
GEHOC announced that they were starting 24 hours. A few, like they say on social media, a few moments later, the MD came back and said that they are going to cut back from the 24-hour. Why? Because it did not make economic sense. You can force yourself that we want to operate 24 hours. Let's go there and see whether indeed there will be customers showing up at 24-hour, like the off 8-hour shifts to do all these transactions.
But for DVLA, they say allow them to clear their backlog.
Don't worry.
Right.
Let your investigative journalists go there and come back with a report and tell us whether indeed they are trying to do it to save face or it is making economic sense. Yes.
I see. So clearly you're saying that, well, maybe not clearly, but what you're then by inference saying is that the 24-hour cycle may not be needed for every sector of the economy.
That is one. It is doable, but it must be premised on effective demand. When you have created an economic framework where there's effective demand, you don't need to even set up an authority to tell people to go and work 24 hours. I was telling one of your colleagues who runs a cold store that if at 11:59 p.m. there's a queue in front of your cold store with people with cash in hand that they are buying your products, will you close your cold store? He says no. I'm like, so a night economy or a 24-hour economy, and that day on the floor, we gave them the list of the various cities that were doing 24 hours. None of them set up an authority. You focus on demand. But if you are running an economy where because you want to achieve a headline inflation rate and show people that inflation has come down to 3.8, you do sterilization. You suck the money from the system, about 60 billion cedis sucked out of the system. And so liquidity for people to generate demand is not present. So that your inflation will come down to 3.8 and everybody will say, wow, inflation has come down to 3.8.
Where's that figure from, the 60 billion you say?
Go to page 284 of the 2026 budget. It's there in black and white. They were challenging it. I don't know whether they haven't read their own budget. It's there, black and white, that the Bank of Ghana sterilized, in fact, 62 billion cedis for the year 2025. That's money they took from the Ghanaian economy because they believe that there's too much currency in circulation, chasing fewer goods and therefore causing inflation. They did not deal with the
inflationary targeting measure.
Yes.
People do it. That you mop up liquidity from the
inflation has two sides. You see, it is when the real sector is not tackling the cost push side of inflation. That's when the Bank of Ghana comes in to do this. Today, this morning, I watched an interview of, I think, the AGI president talking about the increasing cost of production. Electricity bills are going up. Water is becoming more difficult to find, and so water for production is going up. A number of the raw materials for production, especially if they are locally sourced, are going up. So the cost of production is going up. When that goes up, the final price of the product on the market will go up. And as those prices rise at a higher rate, inflation is kicking in. When those responsible for this side, the cost push side, are not dealing with it, the Bank of Ghana will come in and say, okay, there's another way I can deal with it. Let me take the money out of the equation. If I pull money out of the system, you can produce the product, it will be on the market. After a while, when nobody's buying, what would you do?
Go down on the price.
And then they'll come and measure and they'll say that, inflation has come down to 3.
Is that what you think is happening?
That is what they have reported. That is what sterilization does. It sucks money out of the system. And go to page 284 of the budget. They have admitted. Ask them also, when was the last time we sterilized 60 billion cedis in a year? So
there is too much mop up. Because I want us to clarify that mopping up.
Excessive mopping up that is ongoing. It's part of the toolkit. Nobody has said that sterilization is not part of the toolkit. It's part of the toolkit.
Yeah.
But there's excessive because those handling the cost push side are not doing much about it, except, of course, for the imported inflation part. Those handling the cost push side, they are not doing anything. And so the Bank of Ghana, which has the responsibility for price stability, will come in and pull the money from the system.
I want us to take a break. When we come back, I'll take a last word on the 24-hour economy. Then we'll look at the economic indicators into detail. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still hot issues here on TV3. I'm Kemi Niaman, and my guest is Member of Parliament for Ofuase Ayurebi, the Honourable Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah. Honourable, thank you so much for sitting down with us. We've looked at the 24-hour, extensively. Clearly, you are not hopeful that this government will deliver what it's promising.
If this is what
how they go.
Yeah, I mean, if this that they've brought, which they've enacted, which the president has assented to, which they are flagging around, is it, then I regret to tell the young people of this country that they've been deceived. But the government still has time. They can go back to the drawing board and really get going with the things that would create demand, at least for some specific sectors of the economy. And once you generate that demand, nobody will instruct the operator to operate beyond 8 hours. I think they still have time. And if they really mean well to do it, they can do it through the right way. This way that they are going, I regret to say they won't get there.
On the subject of the broader economy, the economic indicators as far as this administration is concerned looks good. But you have poked holes into that and you say that it's only looking good on paper. But how do you convince the Ghanaian people that what you left behind is better than where this administration is taking us?
So I don't think that it's only looking good on paper. I think that the numbers they are publishing are the results of the measurements they have done. But economic management is about policy choices. You make a choice. Every choice you make takes you to a particular method. Every method has a cost and an opportunity cost or a trade-off. And then you have to answer the question of how sustainable is this method? So what we've been interested in doing is asking the government, first of all, that have Kanda be honest with the method you are using. Because it is when you are honest with the method you are using that we can now answer the question of the cost and the trade-off and then the sustainability. So let's go into some of the indicators. Take the currency. It was 14 when we were leaving power. They used to do a lot of propaganda that it was 17. Now everybody's realized it's not true. And sometimes I wonder, why would you even try to convince people that it was 17? It was 14, be honest. And on their watch...
Hang on, this 14 is
14,
Central Bank?
Yes, 14 cedis to the dollar. That's at the morning when we were leaving
Which would be
power.
Different from the Forex market.
But the 17 they talk about was in September. Okay, it wasn't even the Forex number in January.
Right.
So the fact is that it was 14. And that attempt to always do propaganda with it, for me, is part of just their settings regime, which is unhelpful. So 14. And on their watch, they've brought it to 10. On the surface, somebody will say, Aban Papa. But if you are looking at it from economics, you ask yourself, what is the method they are using? And so, Kemini, you will recall that in the first quarter of 2025, I started calling it out on the floor that what you are doing is that you are pumping. The pumping, the technical name for it is the market intervention or the market intermediation that later. When we said it, the governor came and announced that it's not true. They're not intervening. And I'm sure you recall. Then the Bishops' Conference went to see the president and said, the minority is saying that nothing has changed in the economy, but what you are doing is that you are pumping. And the president said, no, it's good leadership. These are matters of public record. And we kept insisting, showing the figures, that look at it, look at the reserves, look at where it's going. It was 8, we brought it to 31, you are depleting and pumping. I remember a debate on the floor with Isaac Adongo. Later, the IMF took notice and said, stop intervening and let's put a framework in place. And so they stopped. So you recall that it started depreciating again to our 12. And when you guys went to see the president, then the president admitted that the Bank of Ghana was intervening and had stopped. That was why it was depreciating. So the real problem had not been solved. It was the intervention. Then when they put the framework in place, part of the framework requires that every month they announce. So now they had to start announcing, we're going to intervene 1 billion, we're going to intervene 800 million. So by the end of the year, you now knew that the method was pumping, market intervention. Nobody has said if you have Forex, don't intervene. But first, be honest that this is it. Why? Because it comes at a cost and there's trade-off. So now when you announce that actually you have admitted you are intervening, the question becomes that for a country that didn't have Forex, where are you getting the Forex from? Now you have to admit that the Forex, I'm getting it from the gold purchase program that the MPP guys brought. And I have also now converted the PMMC into gold board to pull a bit more of that so that I can intervene. No problem. So what is the cost? Is there no cost? No, Aban Papa. Later, the IMF now caught you that you have already lost about $214 million to $300 million on the gold for reserves. Even that one, they came out literally telling untruths that it's speculative. The Bank of Ghana said it's speculative. The Gold Board said there's no loss. That's what led us to Parliament that, okay, then let's have an inquiry and find out the truth.
Has that inquiry begun?
No, we're waiting for Mr. Speaker to take the motion. But you see now the cost is coming. And now you had all their spokespersons and their friends now saying, oh, it's an economic cost. Oh, it's a policy cost. The thing that you say there's no intervention, where did the policy cost come from? This is what I mean when I say the settings and PR is too much. It's okay, so now you're admitting that there's that. Now, somebody like Professor Bokman is even telling you that it's obvious that there's a bit of galamsey gold involved in it. So the other cost, the environmental cost, is your water bodies, etc., that are now getting destroyed. Yesterday, I was at the CDD program.
But the Gold Board has always denied that there's
Do you expect them to admit? The same government that said that there was no intermediation, that it was good governance, do you expect them to admit this one? So if that's what you're expecting, you'll be disappointed. But here's my point. Yesterday, the CDD reported that when they were coming to power, about 47 forest reserves had been taken over by Galamsey, and now it's about 50. The CDD reported it yesterday. So is the Galamsey going down or up? So the methods matter. The costs and the trade-offs matter. Then you ask yourself the final question, so how sustainable is it? So now you've heard that about 50% of our gold reserves have been sold and converted into forex. We fear that part of that forex is also going to be intervened in the market. And then now the original program, which was to help us build our reserves, is now being depleted for the purpose of achieving a pegged currency of 10. So our interest is in be honest with the method, be honest with the cost. Let's answer the question, but if it's at 10, don't we all benefit? If it's at 10 and it's genuine, we all benefit. Take something like inflation. I've just explained to you that inflation, what they are doing heavily is sterilization, because the cost of production is rather going up.
Right, but you see, again,
if you admit the sterilization, let me just land on that one. When you admit sterilization is not free. When the Bank of Ghana sacks the money, they pay an interest rate. So even if that rate is 10%, when you sterilize 60 billion, how much is the Bank of Ghana going to pay? That'll be a loss on their books. Apart from that, the other cost of the sterilization is that there's no money in town. So demand will suffer. Growth eventually will suffer. So that's the cost. And then you ask yourself sustainability. How long can you sterilize 60 billion a year? So just to wrap up, the headline figures, we haven't challenged the headline figures. We have only said that be honest about the methods you are using, the cost of those methods, and the sustainability. Because if I have high blood pressure, and what I need to do is to change lifestyle to be sustainably well, and all I'm doing is taking medication, and I measure, and I say the blood pressure has come down, if we are not honest about the method, the day we are not able to take that medication, where will we be?
So what we're feeling now as a people, because it comes back to the original question I asked, what we're feeling now as a people is temporary.
It is being achieved through some methods. For us, we have said the government should be honest with the methods so that you can know the cost and answer the question about the sustainability. We have alternative methods.
But do you think that as long as I'm buying fuel at a lower price, do you think that the people will care about the method?
The people will eventually care. When the people heard that the currency had come down to 10, and initially were not, may I say, interested in the methods, they let it go until it got to a time where they now found out that they've lost about $300 million on the other side. And now the people started asking, what has been going on here? They will care eventually. When the intervention was going on and we were subsidizing importation or externalization of forex, the people didn't care until Cocoa Board realized that for every dollar that they earn, they have lost 36% of it. You see, when the finance minister tells you that the currency has appreciated by 36%, the inverse of that is that for every dollar that Cocoa Board earns, he has lost 36% of that. So it will come to a time that he cannot pay the cocoa farmer. So the people will eventually care. But we have a responsibility that when we see the method and we can see the outcome of the method, we draw your attention to it. That, Chairman, we all want Ghana to go well, but this method, this is the consequence of it at the end of the day. Can we adopt another method? If you listen, all well for all of us. If you say because I've lost an election, I should sit home and keep quiet, I will state it for the record. Tomorrow, when that problem comes, the people will ask you that, So why did you not listen?
Since you've talked about the issue of responsibility, I want us to move away from the economic indicators, because there's so much to talk about, right? Is there true parliamentary oversight today?
Not enough.
Why do you say that?
What we are doing now is scratching the surface. We need to, as the People's House, take on the task of doing proper oversight, particularly over the government policies and programs. If you read the Constitution, Article 36(5), it says that when you come to power, the programs you are going to run, present them to Parliament. Why? So that the people will be seized, the people of Ghana will be seized with clarity on what you want to do. We can appropriate budgets for you. And we can now keep an eye on it. Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Is this being fulfilled? Is it meeting its objectives? What is happening is that the government is literally refusing to bring its policies and programs to Parliament. You've heard me several times asking them to bring it. And that ask that we ask is in concordance with Article 36(5). Article 36(5) requires them to put it together. But what governments do is that somehow midway or even before that one, they'll be launching programs. So the proper interpretation of 36(5) is that all your policies and programs, you have to bring them. They are not bringing them. So Parliament doesn't have them. Once Parliament doesn't have them, you can't even exercise oversight. So the 1 million coders program, how many months are they being trained for? Is it 60% female, 40% male, or the inverse? Are they going to be given capital to work after that? Or they're going to be given internet? What does it entail? You don't know, I don't know, the young people don't know. The minister and his people are going to launch it somewhere, and that's all we have of it. And if you tell it, if you say they'll go to the internet and go and search for it, that's not how you govern. You bring it to Parliament, the necessary parliamentary committees have oversight. Currently, the government has launched about 17 programs. We've been keeping track of it. It's only one, the 24-hour economy program, after we insisted over and over again that the program has now been brought to Parliament. And even that one, they brought the bill before they brought the program itself. No problem. We will take it and work with it. But for all of the other, the program document is not before Parliament. The National Apprenticeship Program is not before Parliament. The Feed Ghana is not before Parliament. I follow it keenly, and it's not there. And what that does is that it limits how much oversight that Parliament is doing.
I see. So, and in terms of those that end up in Parliament, are you, as the minority, able to exert your oversight duties on those that make it to Parliament?
Every time they have bothered to bring their documentation to Parliament, I'm sure you and your viewers will attest to how much work the minority does. In fact, when they bring bills, half the time we will go through the bills in detail and be showing them that we think this is incongruous, it should be moved this way. I was just telling you about the Security and Intelligence Services Bill. Recently, we did the Bank of Ghana Amendment Bill, where they were now trying to pass into law the fact that if the government is not getting revenue, Bank of Ghana should give them money, which we think is dangerous. We raised it on the floor, they had the numbers, they voted against us. But every time they bring documentation to Parliament, we do a diligent job to assist government business. Unfortunately, when it comes to the programs, they've brought only one, the 24-hour economy program. And we're asking them to bring it. In fact, right now, we are thinking of going to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to make a declaration that all of those programs that they have been launching should be brought to Parliament.
One of the things that we have heard from grassroots, and it has to do with minority leadership, that your name came up to replace the current leader. Have you heard this?
I've heard this, but I think it's totally unnecessary. As a caucus, we are not having any conversations about the change of leadership in our caucus. And I think it's totally unnecessary. We are focused, united, working together to hold the government to account on its promises.
The NPP recently elected its flag bearer, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. The processes, of course, will continue after that. Only this week, I think, the General Secretary also announced the rules for the internal elections, and so we're expecting, a lot of campaigning in the future for the NPP. But I want to focus on the flag bearer, right? How do you think that 2028 would look like for the flag bearer? Because the NDC is already saying, look, it doesn't matter who stands, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is not a match.
They remind me of what we used to be saying before 2016, that, Mahama had lost elections so poorly by 1 million, he can never win again. was sitting here when he won by over 1 million. What I have seen, especially now as it happens, is that over a political cycle, sometimes some of the things that you are doing that are not understood, over a cycle, they get better understood. When Dr. Bawumia initially was talking about the gold purchase program and how it became an anchor, everybody, or a good number of people, were not even paying attention to him. Today, people now see it, and the government can't hide it, and it's clear that this guy has brilliant ideas. You know, one of his ideas that we haven't implemented yet is a credit system. Okay? You know, many people haven't paid attention to it. But you travel a lot. You know that those who live abroad, about 60-70% of their purchases are on credit. What does that do? It stimulates a lot of demand in the economy. On the reverse side, it puts your quality of life at some point. You don't have to avoid buying it because you don't have cash today. You can buy it on credit and pay. So your quality of life is improved. But more importantly, productivity in the economy is enhanced. Is that productivity, that demand, in fact, is that demand that leads to productivity. And once that productivity is occurring, you have jobs and investments on the back of it. That's what will actually lead to something like a 24-hour economy, not an authority. By stimulating demand, creating a credit system. That's another brilliant idea from Mahmoud Bawumia that has not even come to life. Over time, the Ghanaian people will see a lot of his brilliant ideas, that some of which the government admitted, which worked, some of which are yet to be implemented. And I am hopeful that over time, before we get to 2020, Ghanaians will make that decision that this guy is the next guy we should give an opportunity to move our economy to the next level.
You don't think it's too soon for that, especially when a lot of people think that things are better now than, the NPP left it?
The cocoa farmers don't think so. The nurses who were promised automatic posting, they don't think so. The midwives who've stayed home for 11 months and who haven't been paid don't think so. The contractors who have not been paid don't think so. The teachers who were told that licensure exam will be cancelled and now they are going to write it in a few months, they don't think so. As time goes on, like the boys say on the street, give time some time, people will begin to realize that comparing to the promises that our friends made and how they lambasted us on even things that we're doing very well and what they are delivering, they should give Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and the NPP an opportunity. We got some things right, we got some things wrong, we've learned from what we got wrong, and when they give us another opportunity, Dr. Bawumia will do an excellent job to their satisfaction. I'm hopeful that we'll get to that day.
I see. And you spoke a lot about the gold purchase program. And then I'm just remembering that when the central bank governor appeared before PAC, he had talked about the gold purchase program and how they couldn't follow some money and they were investigating it further because they didn't have the receipts there at the time. And so how do you reconcile that with the success that you say that the gold purchase program has?
There's no record of the gold. So the gold purchase program has three parts: gold for reserves, gold for forex, gold for oil. Gold for oil was a temporary program when we didn't have forex, we needed oil. Gold for reserves and gold for forex were the two permanent programs. The Gold for Reserves program, there's no record that it was making a loss. They've published their accounts under his signature. There's no loss in there. It's the gold for oil that made losses. We're hoping that Mr. Speaker will allow the inquiry and we'll get to sit down and we'll get to go into all of those details.
So it shouldn't pose a problem to the campaign if it's going to build it's around economic prowess?
Absolutely not. The kind of economic work that was done between 2017 and 2020 was stellar. Inflation was brought down without sterilization. Inflation was brought down just using tight monetary policy. The economy started growing, mostly driven by an industrial program, 1D, 1F. We saw what's happening on the job side. We were hit with a challenge in 2020. No matter how we explained, our colleagues just sought to capitalize on the pain of Ghanaians and make a lot of promises to them. By the time we tried recovery...
Well, because it wasn't only Ghana that suffered that challenge.
That is true.
You're referring to COVID, aren't you?
Yes.
It's not only Ghana that suffered challenge.
Absolutely, but every other country, each his own, had their own share of economic challenges. What happened in our situation was that our friends capitalized on it and made it look like we were just wicked to Ghanaians. No problem. Ghanaians believed them, voted for them, and Ghanaians, I believe, are gradually beginning to see that these guys hoodwinked us on several things. I'm saying give time some time. We will continue outlining what we did on the economy and what remains undone on the economy. And I'm hopeful that over time, They were banding around that Cocoa Board owes 30 billion. That's the problem. I've just showed you that that is $3 billion. They left us $4.7 billion. When we come to that debate, the Ghanaian sitting at home who has done basic mathematics knows that $4.7 billion is higher than $3 billion, and he won't buy that story anymore. So we will go through it, and we are hopeful that the Ghanaian at the end of the day will come to a point where he realizes that he was hoodwinked, and when it comes to make a choice, he will give us an opportunity.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, Kemini.
Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Ofuase Ayerbi. We've been talking all things economy. We've also looked at the cocoa sector crisis, the 24-hour economy, and some issues to do with Parliament and the NPP. This is Hot Issues. I'm Kemini Amana. I'll see you same time next week. Bye-bye.